everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Randomly Levelled, which I once heard that the average amount of episodes for a podcast was 3 episodes, so already we're above average. That's not saying much, so if the average is 3. And today I have someone other than Big C with me here today. It is Game Wizard. Do you want to say hi?
Hi guys.
The subject for today is technology and how technology has changed over the years and what trends that has caused. And also, I have 5 questions. Now, Game Wizard here doesn't have 5 questions, and that's fine. He said he's going to, if he can think of 5 by the time that we get to that, then that's fine. But, you know, we could just run with it, see how things go. But I've got 5 questions here. Although these 5 questions are the questions that I originally had for Big C in the Lost Second episode, which didn't record properly. And you know, that's quite funny in a way, because I think of Super Mario 2 as like, you know, you got the lost levels. Well, it's like you've got the lost episode 2. Which is weird. Okay, so technology over the years. If we go right back to the start and we look at Pong and we look at the Atari and all that, that is long before either of our times. So we can't speak from experience there. Although I would say that obviously at the time it would have been a big deal that with the Atari you can play games on your TV set. Of course, it's strange to, I mean, you can look back at times and think about how things are different and stuff, but that was long before our time, so we really can't relate to that. After that, this is also before my time as well. We had the Nintendo Entertainment System and 8-bit consoles, and even though this was before my time, I do have some experience with these consoles and these types of games. So I'm going to ask you now. Is there anything that you think was particularly trendy in the 8-bit days?
Trendy.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I think of like, you know, Super Mario Brothers, and that was like the big game for the NES back in the day.
Without a doubt.
And there was a lot of, when I think back to, there was a lot of like platform games, and I talked about this with, this is part of what we were saying in episode 2, the real episode 2, I believe, with Big C, because he was saying how there used to be a lot more mascots, but that's more dipping into the 16-bit generation, which we'll go into soon. But when I think of like platformers on the Nintendo, I think of Super Mario Brothers. I think of Mega Man 1 through 6, although the one that everyone thinks of is Mega Man 2. But outside of those two, I can't really think of any that were actually based on just being a game as opposed to being attached to some sort of brand. I mean, I'm sure there must have been loads.
Yeah, I'm sure there was others too. I just really can't think of any. I mean, you know, you got like Ghouls and Ghosts. Is that considered like a platformer? Or Ghosts and Goblins?
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think of what console that was for a second. Because, see, I didn't grow up with a Nintendo at all, so I'm not
I think one of them is on the Nintendo, and the other one's on the sequel's on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, but I
I may be wrong though.
those games. Oh, you know, now it suddenly hit me. You think of games like Castlevania,
Yeah.
and Metroid, and see, when I think old games, even though this isn't the case all the time, when I think of old games like the old 8-bit games, I think of very concise and very linear games. Like if I think of the Master System, for example, I think of like Alex Kidd. Although I only really played Alex Kidd in Shinobi World, which I really liked, and Shinobi. They were both very straightforward games. Like you would go from point A to B.
Hmm.
And again, this is something we talked about on the platform game episode. But then you look at something like Mega Man, and you've got like a level select, and you choose the order of which you defeat the robot masters. So that is kind of not true. And also with Castlevania 2, regardless of how good that game is, it's certainly more open in terms of going around the world and going to towns and stuff, which is something that I wouldn't associate with that generation, even though it was there.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I think it was because I started with the 16-bit generation that I imagine when I look at the jump from the 16-bit to the next generation. So what generation? Hold on, 16-bit generation. What generation number would that be? Would that be generation 4? Yeah, it would be. Yeah. So I started with the Amiga back in generation. That would have been generation 4 because it was 16-bit. At least I imagine it would be that.
Yeah.
And then I soon after that got a Mega Drive. So I was very used to 16-bit as being the standard. And certainly, I was never introduced to RPGs at that time. I wasn't introduced to really like big open worlds. So I suppose that in my mind, I wouldn't have looked back to like the Nintendo and thought that there would have been that bigger element of openness, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And I think it's something. I think if you want to talk about a generation that uses openness, or at least is marketed on openness, you have to jump to Generation 7, and we'll get to that when we uh, talk about that. But thinking about Generation 4 with the Super Nintendo and the Genesis and all that lot, do you think there was a particular trend that was going on there? And is there anything that you think that the technology allowed that they couldn't have done in the previous generation that caused trends to happen?
What generation again?
The fourth generation, so like the Genesis and the Super Nintendo.
Okay. Um, what was the question again?
It's. Do you think there was anything that like any the jump in technology from the Nintendo to the next generation, like the Super Nintendo and the Genesis? Do you think that the jump in technology caused a change in the types of games that were being made? Because it is a hard question, to be
Yeah.
honest, because when I think of like jumps between generations, it's like I can look at the 16-bit generation and I can look back, and the thing is I don't know how familiar you are with these generations, so I don't know how much information you're worth. Can you hear me?
Lost you for a second.
Oh, seem to have a bit of a connection issue there, which only seemed temporary. How long did you lose me for?
Few seconds.
All right. Yeah, I'll just say what I was. That's all right. Yeah. Basically, I was just saying that when you look at the jump from the 8-bit to the 16-bit, the jump in graphical quality and the jump in like audio and sound quality
Hmm.
is obvious. But when you look at the games that are being made, it's, at least to me, I don't see things that actually happened like in the 16-bit generation where they said, we've got 16 bits now, we can do this thing that those previous games couldn't do. I can think of like Sonic the Hedgehog was based off being fast and everything.
Yeah.
Um, and the way that he ran around loops. And the Super Nintendo had Mode 7, I believe it's called. So you had games like F-Zero, and you
Hmm.
had things like the way that you flew the airship in Final Fantasy VI, even though I didn't think that looked good at all compared to how it does on 4 and 5. But
Hmm.
I don't think of any. I can't think of any like other than those. I can't think of any changes that really happened.
I
Can
can't.
you think of any
I,
games that would that are that? Can you think of any games that are on the 16-bit consoles like the Genesis and the Super
yeah,
Nintendo that other than graphics and audio quality, flat out could not be on the Nintendo without major changes?
that's really hard to answer. I can't really think of many games, if any, that would not work on the regular Nintendo,
And
besides
that's
graphics.
and you see that's exactly the same for me because I was think what I was thinking of well they did introduce a bit of 3D to it like with Sonic 3D
Yeah,
and
that may not have worked on like the regular Nintendo.
well there was Sonic 3D and there was something else I was thinking of Space Harrier and I was thinking those have a sort of 3D perspective to
Hmm.
them even though they're not like polygons or anything they've got a
Yeah,
level of 3D perspective to them that you couldn't do on the previous consoles. But then I thought of Snake Rattle and Roll, which does use that same 3D perspective as Sonic 3D, and I think of what was the other game? Oh, I can't remember what it was called. 3D World Runner. It was a SquareSoft game where I don't know what you do. You just run forwards and jump over holes. It's yeah, and with a name like 3D World Runner, it was obviously a
um,
huge thing at the time.
yeah.
But even then, I was thinking of examples of things that they couldn't have been. So I think of when I think of like differences, it would have to just all I can think of is graphical and audio quality, and maybe processor speed. Maybe there's little things that we couldn't really pick out. And but saying that though, there are games where you play, say, the Genesis version, and then you play the Master System version, and you can feel a difference. Have
Hmm.
you have you played either version of Streets of Rage?
I played Streets of Rage on my PlayStation 3. I haven't played it on the original.
Yeah, well,
I
that's
want to
based
though.
off the original. Well, the one that's on the PS3, unless it's different in the US than it is over here.
It may.
The one on the PS3 is it Streets of Rage 2?
I think they have three on there.
All right,
Streets of Rage 1,
I,
2, and 3.
right. Well, I think it's only two here. But if you
Hmm.
play Streets of Rage 1 on like a Genesis or a Mega Drive or whatever it's called, wherever you are, then and then you play the Master System version, there is a difference. When you play it, you can feel a difference. But then I'm also wondering how much of that difference is purely down to your own perspective and you thinking that it's different because of the graphic and the audio difference. I don't know. I really
Yeah.
don't know. As for as for trends and stuff, there were a lot more mascots and stuff in that generation because I think this is where people started taking note of the whole Sonic versus Mario thing.
Yeah.
Because you had things like Bubsy,
But
Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, which I liked, Aero the Acrobat. Uh, there's a bunch of others that didn't really kick off. There was Mr. Nuts and Captain Havoc, which are both strange. I've played very slight bits of those. Can't remember why,
hmm.
but I did. Um, just to test them out, I suppose.
Yeah.
So if we're going up to the next generation, think about okay, the question was hard for the previous generation. This should be easy. Can you think of any games on the PlayStation and N64 that wouldn't have been possible on the Genesis or Super Nintendo?
That's very easy.
Well, exactly. It's
Like
obvious, isn't
basically any game.
it? Well, there you go.
It's
It's a
like
very
every game.
mm,
It's like you can play Batman Batman Arkham Asylum on the Sega Genesis.
well. if you think about like,
I mean, you could if you altered it.
it would be a different game.
It'd be just completely, probably be like a side scroller or something with,
It would be Batman Returns, but with reskins. It would be something like that.
yeah.
If you think of like obviously Crash Bandicoot, you couldn't do that on the 16-bit consoles.
No.
Mario 64, you couldn't do it
Nope.
because they have genuine 3D elements to them with polygons and everything.
Hmm.
So obviously there was a big jump there. But do you think that that jump from the 16-bit to the next generation, Generation 5, which is where we've got the PS1 and the
PS1 and
N64.
64.
Yeah, do you think that games were at all set back by people desiring to make a game 3D because it was brand new technology?
Hmm.
That there was such a big
Like
a big bunch of like shovelware, like look at this 3D stuff which
like
isn't actually good.
like Bubsy
Because if
3D.
exactly that's what comes to mind. Because if you look at the Wii and you think about the amount of shovelware on the Wii,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, we've got motion control, so let's make a million games where you waggle the Wii remote around, and like Ninja Bread Man and those carnival
And
games and
Wii
all that.
Sports and
But do you think there was? I mean, obviously, Bubsy 3D is a huge example. But do you think there's any? Do you think there's any other examples of where the industry kind of went down a bit in quality because of this desire to make something 3D for the sake of it being 3D?
yeah, I'm sure it has. I just can't think of any specific games. I'm sure I could if I actually thought about it. You know, like people they try to make the game in 3D and it takes away from what they try to originally accomplish.
Well, when I think of the introduction to of 3D,
Like everything has to be made in 3D for it to be good.
yeah, and this is actually quite interesting because when I was first exposed to the PS1, and I was much younger than what I am now, of course, because that's how time goes. It shouldn't need to be said. Um, how old? I don't know how old I would have been. To me, because I was playing 2D games for so long without the ability to go 3D, the idea of being in 3D was massive. So I was playing games like when I was first played on a PS1, it was my granddad's, which eventually became mine,
Mm.
and I was playing this on this demo disc, and I was playing. It was Crash Bandicoot, Battle Arena Toshinden.
Yep.
And what else was that? Ridge Racer, and
Yeah.
there was some other. Surely there must have been some other games, but it was this jump to 3D where it was just fantastic that now we have 3D. And when I saw gameplay footage of Heart of Darkness, I was so confused because it wasn't 3D and it was on the PlayStation. And it just felt felt really strange to me at that time that something that wasn't 3D would come out on the PlayStation. I was just
And be like
yeah.
and be 2D.
You,
How is Heart of Darkness anyway? I mean, perspective wise,
are you familiar
like
with
2D or 3D?
Heart of Darkness? It's a side scroller. It's
Okay.
it's one of those cinematic side scrollers like the original Prince of Persia and Another World, where
Okay.
um it's like I don't know how you really describe. It's like it's a side scroller with pre-rendered backgrounds and
I get you.
like the way that you interact with things is like because it's all pre-rendered backgrounds. It's like everything is its own thing. Are you familiar with Abe's Odyssey?
Yes.
I'd say it's kind of like that in a way, but much more linear. It's perhaps the most linear game I've ever played, or one of the most linear games I've ever played. It's extremely linear, but it's a good game. But yeah, I was saying that I was like really surprised that there was this. What's this? A 2D game on the PlayStation? But what's funny about that is that that was so many years ago. I was like really surprised that this 2D game was coming out for the PlayStation, and now we've got like the PS4 and the Xbox One playing games like Thomas Was Alone, and we just brush it off like, yeah, yeah, that's just whatever. I think it's strange how we've gone from that to that, and I think it's to do with maturing and just realizing
Yeah.
games are games, whatever. But in terms of trends, like we were discussing with the on the platform episode, and I don't want this to be a repeat of that episode, but we were talking about how the 3D platform games tend to be more based on collecting things because there's more of an element of exploration. There's more places to go, and so there's ways of missing out areas without it being based on your height. If you get what I mean, like the height of how high and how low you go.
Yeah.
So I think that was certainly a trend, but I think the introduction to 3D was done really well. I mean, I know people say like, "Oh, you look back at those games now and they look awful." I'm not bothered, for the most part. I mean,
me neither.
If you go back and try and, I mean, control-wise, it was before analog sticks.
Like Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, yeah, it was before analog sticks, and oh, I tell you a game that totally threw me off when I first played it because it just confused me. Pandemonium. Have you played that?
I believe I've heard of it.
Well, it's 2.5D, but I was totally like unaware of how it worked because of like it really confused me that pressing you it was always left or right that you pressed, but the camera would make it so that it wasn't exactly right or left that you moved. It really threw me off. But yeah, I would say that was a really good jump. I mean, of course, graphically, there's always that element of like, oh, I'm impressed with the new graphics, but I think it was pretty good in that there wasn't those games that really, you look back and you think they made this just to be 3D or whatever, or they made this just to show off the new console. The games that were like really, really bad, but we were younger. Maybe if we were older during that time, we'd be more cynical.
Yeah, we probably would have been.
Do you think the next generation, which is Generation 6 with the PS2 and the GameCube and all that, do you think there was any particular jump there? That was anything introduced that changed the trends?
They put some new mechanics that that when they made new games. I'm trying to think of some.
Well,
of course the graphics there.
Yeah.
But that's no surprise.
Yeah, it was.
Well, basically everything's in 3D except for maybe a few things.
Well, for one, it was where they really, with the PS2 at least, it was where they really kicked off the idea that the analog stick was something different to
utilize.
Yeah, it was something different other than just an extra D-pad. Because if you remember, the analog stick in the PS1 games, I think with the exception of Ape Escape, the analog stick was just another version of the D-pad. Whatever the analog stick did, the D-pad also did it. The analog stick was just a bit more fluid. But I remember when I first got my PS2 and I loaded up Dark Cloud and I tried walking around using the D-pad, I wouldn't move. I'd be like, has the game crashed? What's going on? Is my controller not working? But then it turned out you have to use the analog stick, and that to me that was the first introduction of the idea that the analog stick is its own separate thing. And
I don't know why I didn't think of that. That's a very good thing.
yeah,
There's a lot of games they don't let you use the D-pad. You have to use the analog stick. Some games let you use both, depending on what it is.
and I think it's best for you. I think in most cases it's best for you to use the analog stick because,
In in 3D games, yeah, depends on what you're playing.
of course, yeah,
Like if like when I play like say there's a side scroller or something on there, I end up tending to use the D-pad because it
exactly.
just feels more
Bec-
fluid that way.
because the D-pad, it's a digital input device. It's either the button is either pressed or not pressed, which is what you need for something that either set on or off, if you know what I mean. So
Hmm.
something I think like Mega Man is a perfect example.
Yeah.
The type of game where you walk without any acceleration, without any variance in your speed. You want a D-pad
Hmm.
because it's just going to feel weird, like nudging
Moving.
it to like the side a
Yeah.
bit or whatever.
I've actually tried doing that and it doesn't work.
It's awful.
It's weird. But like if I didn't have a D-pad, I'd be like, oh, I can't play this.
But I think I was going to go into talking about the Xbox 360 controller, but we'll get to that in a moment
Hmm.
when we get onto that generation. Um, but yeah, actually, yeah. Let's just go there now
Okay.
because I think that with that generation, it started. We had the analog stick and everything, and I think that the 360 controller really screwed up with the D-pad and I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that the 360 sees the D-pad as not something used for.
Gameplay.
Uh, yeah,
It's
you know what?
like in Halo or something. I think I don't know what games you can do that. Like you push the D-pad to like select whatever type ammo or something
Exactly. I think that they designed that D-pad with that in mind. So,
instead of actual
but then you,
functionality.
but if you look at something like menu screens, for example, you need a D-pad.
Hmm.
They're just so much better, and yet it doesn't seem to fit that because it's more flimsy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's
I didn't really like the 360 D-pad. It's got like
no,
it kind of feels like a analog stick in a way, if that makes sense. But it's not. It's
I
because
know
it's not like
exactly what you
the
mean.
face plates are not just there for you to push like moves.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And also something that the seventh generation introduced controller wise, analog input for the shoulder buttons, like triggers.
Oh,
Which actually, no, to be fair, the GameCube did that before.
yeah, yeah. The GameCube did that too.
Well, that was quite interesting.
Gives
I think
more gameplay options.
I think that with this jump to the seventh generation, it's kind of a special one in a way because I think quite a lot happened, both good and bad. I think that the online stores and everything, because it really became online, and I know the PS2 can connect online, although it didn't in Europe. That just didn't happen in Europe.
Hmm,
Um,
I didn't know that.
yeah, which is why we never got a PS2 copy of Final Fantasy 11 because it wouldn't have worked anyway because we don't have online.
Wow.
At least I don't believe so. It may have been some like really like cryptic way of getting it to work, but I don't know.
Hmm.
But I think, like for example, with the online store and everything, it opened up the chance for newer, like smaller games to come out, which is why we see games like Thomas Was Alone and all that,
Hmm.
because there's an avenue for those games to get in for a cheap price. But of course, I think the bad thing about this level of technology is that now we're introduced to things like online passes
Hmm.
and um,
D-
DRM,
DLC.
DLC, yes, which you know the DLC isn't bad in and of itself, but it's one of those things that they're going to abuse, like they have done, like
Yeah.
microtransactions and all that. So
Got
yeah,
gun skins and leveling up your
Yeah.
characters via purchasing, like
Oh yeah.
Tales of Graces has it where you can it's like five different ones you can level up the character, like I don't know how many times. It's like
Oh.
five times for
Do you,
$5. Or no, I don't remember. I know there's like five. You can purchase it five times, and you give money every time, and you get levels for all your characters.
it's it's like I don't have words for things like that. Like what you can buy to unlock things. It's like you buy the game, you unlock things by playing the game. That's the fun. If you're going to buy the game and then pay for the fun bit to go, you're just leaving yourself with other stuff. Like what is going on?
What's the point of
And
playing?
well, people say like people do say, oh well, it's good for those people who don't have enough time, and it's good for those people who just want to get it out of the
Well,
way.
make the time. Well, not make. I don't mean
Well,
make the time, but I mean like go at your own pace. Enjoy it.
well, yeah, there's definitely that, but also it's just like uh,
No words.
I've lost track of what I'm saying. There's no words. It's so hard to like get a grasp on this because it's so hard to get the words to say this because it's like okay, it always makes me think that there's a scene from a Family Guy episode which, regardless of what you think of the
Hmm.
program or anything like that, there's one scene from a Family Guy episode that I think sums this up perfectly, where Peter goes to a shop, um, and he sees a puzzle book, and he goes to it, and then I may be a bit off on the details here, but he's going to go to buy this puzzle
Hmm.
book, and the guy selling it is like, "How about this? The answers have already been filled in. You think you're going to sit down for some challenging and taxing puzzles? How about you just put it on the table and grab yourself a beer?" And he's like, "Wow, I want that." So it's like, you can't just buy the satisfaction of having done things.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. You have to do things. And like when they say, "Oh, it's there to save people time." Well, no, because the people who have made the game made it so that you have to pay money to have that. So if anything, they're taking time away from them and then selling it back to them.
Oh, I never thought of that. It's like in an RPG. You're like if you get, I think it was like 20 levels or something for all your characters after you purchased all that DLC. You lost all that time from the gameplay. You never, you know, everything's going to be easy up until a certain point.
I saw a I saw a Let's Play of Final Fantasy VIII by Necroscope, who I've not watched for a while, and I do I do like his videos, but there's one there's been a couple of times, but there was one time in particular where it's like it's just one of those moments because he he kind of he used like this like he like did a cheat or whatever to get his GFs, like loads of levels and loads of
Hmm.
EP, no
Yeah,
AP, or he just like it was like an emulator who just like sped it up or whatever and did it all off
yeah,
screen.
I get that.
And and he said, "Oh, I'm just I'm not doing it to I'm not cheating because if I didn't do this, what that means is that I would have spent 100 hours grinding." And there was another time on Final Fantasy V where he was looking for a particular rare item from an enemy or a chest or whatever, and he save stated by the chest, and he just like opened it, note reload, note reload, note reload, over and over
Hmm.
again. And he was saying, if I didn't do this, I would have reloaded the game over and over again, and it would have taken longer. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, no, you wouldn't. If you had to do that, you wouldn't bother. It's not the same.
I think I did something similar to that, like in Skyrim, but it wasn't to that effect. It was
But the thing is,
I was
Sky.
behind somebody, like in one of the guilds or something, and he had gold, and it was only like a small percentage. So I kept loading it until I got it. But I wouldn't do that in an RPG like Final Fantasy. I'd play it on the whatever on my TV, and if I screw up, I screw up.
But the thing is with Skyrim is that that's not cheating. That's in the game. You can
Yeah,
save
you
anywhere.
can't save. You
So
can't. Yeah, I see. You can't save anywhere you want, like Final Fantasy VI, unless it's or whatever Final Fantasy, unless it's like in the overworld or something.
if 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 the game lets you save before a big cataclysmic random event that might not happen, then you can completely just keep reloading until it works in your favor, and it won't be cheating
Hmm.
and it won't be fun. Which is one of the reasons why I think that save anywhere is a useful mechanic. That's something else that's built up with technology as well. That we're now being able to do. It's a useful idea, and it's certainly great in some circumstances.
Yeah,
But people, there's some things that are just overlooked. If like if you can do something with a small chance, but you have to keep
reloading it.
okay. If the game is such a way that the most efficient method of getting something done is reloading, trying again, repeatedly until this small random chance thing happens, then that's a problem with the game's design.
Hold on. Yes, I'm busy right now. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll probably just edit that bit out.
Okay. I think I was gonna say something about Kingdom Hearts or something like where there's this item or weapon you need to get from some type of enemy and it has a small chance and you have a better chance
Yes,
of
yes.
reloading it or restarting the console or something to get the
Well, no, 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 no. Hold on. Okay. Kingdom Hearts, and I remember because I did this when I platinumed it at the end of last
hmm.
year. I it was there's the defender for Goofy and
Yeah, oh yeah.
the wizard staff for
Donald.
yeah, Donald. Um, but the thing is that you can make those enemies respawn, and there's particular areas where they appear most, so you can grind them out.
Yeah.
But you know, at least at least with that, if you go to do that, if you want to do that, you are playing in within the game's rules for the game's own intended purpose. Like I was saying, like your example with Skyrim, where you keep saving, reload, and then try again, fail, reload. That load system was, I doubt, it was intended to do that, but
Mm.
that's just how it turned out.
Mm.
We've gone on a bit of a tangent, which is perfectly fine, and uh, we can go on to the questions. Do you have any questions?
Um, I haven't really thought of any since I've been in a heat of conversation.
Yeah, that's fine. If you haven't got any questions, I'll just go through mine,
Okay.
and I'll answer them as well. So, and again, these are the questions that I was going to ask Big C on the original episode 2 before we lost the recording. Okay, so the first question is, uh, and this actually relates to the topic, which is purely coincidental. Do you think games have gotten better or worse over the years? How and why?
Hmm. It's a good one. Depends on the game. Sometimes it's gotten better, and sometimes it's gotten worse. Depending on the developer and who made the
I
game.
think, I think just saying games overall
Overall,
is yeah. I think just saying have games got better is a huge question because then you have to
like
include every single piece of shovelware.
yeah, you're saying has the games gotten better overall? You're like yes. Well, that could be true or false, but it depends on what you like. But like we get like Call of Duties all the time and all that.
Yeah.
They don't try to innovate sometimes. You may get some company that wants to innovate and make something new.
I wouldn't know if I would say that game. I mean, overall, I wouldn't have a clue how to answer this question
I
because
wouldn't know either overall.
a part of me looks at the games that are big and popular. If I compare like Call of Duty and Assassin's
Yeah.
Creed to say uh, Crash Bandicoot and all that,
Hmm.
it's a different time frame with a different audience in mind, and since like time has passed, we've got more of a history with games now, so we expect. I'm going to say we expect more, but by more I don't mean more stuff. I mean stuff that's more stuff that's more intricate, but not necessarily better.
Hmm.
So we expect like for example, Crash Bandicoot. There's very specific animations for running and jumping and stuff. But then if you look at something like Uncharted, there's going to be like a different animation for like each angle of rock that you grab,
Yeah.
which clearly looks better. It does. But at the same time, does it matter? Really?
No, not really.
I wouldn't say so.
Hmm.
I would much rather have say if like yeah. I know it sounded like I stopped my sentence halfway through, but I realized a better way to say my sentence. So basically what I'm saying is that I would much rather have, say, a game like Crash Bandicoot come out, but at the same time I know that if it did, it would be an indie game. And if if Crash Bandicoot came out today as opposed to
Back then.
back on the PS1, I don't think I would give it the same like level of notice. Not because I think, oh well, games are so much better now, but because we've got this shift of we've got like this paradigm shift where everything that was big, like if we look at platform games, it's hard for us to now look at those and see them in a triple A perspective. Do
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I see what you mean.
We can't look at Crash Bandicoot and say this is a big game or whatever, and so we look at those games and we assume like this is an indie thing. I mean, of course, something like Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends is an exception to that, but it's still a different landscape. I don't know how to answer this question.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay. And again, another question that completely relates to the topic, which is very, very coincidental. What game series do you think has the smoothest transition from 2D to 3D?
Ooh, that's a nice one. We're in this generation still, right?
Well, anything
Because
that's
I can think of games back in the day when it was like Zelda 2D, or I don't really know if that's 2D. I mean, it's not really 2D, but you go from that to like Ocarina of Time.
hmm
Mm.
I think it depends on the game.
Yeah, it really does.
And this is going back to what we were saying about how if a game was made 3D and people were saying like, oh, it's terrible because of that. People say that about Sonic, but from what I know, it wasn't such a big thing back when like say Sonic Adventure came out.
Yeah,
It's more nowadays where we have games like Sonic 06 and Sonic Unleashed and stuff, and
Sonic Unleashed.
yeah, and people say like, oh, the 2D bits are the best. But Mario had a everyone liked Mario 64,
Yeah,
so
they had a good he had a good transition.
yeah. But I would say that I mean when I asked Big C this on the the lost episode, what we can call it. He
Hmm.
said um, Final Fantasy games, regardless of how you think they look, they still played. They didn't like how they played wasn't affected by like their 3D
By
perspective.
the 3D.
And that really boils down to how it's like if you've got a game which isn't environmental in its gameplay, then graphics are really just aesthetics. If you know what I mean,
Hmm.
it's just how it looks. It doesn't really affect anything other than how it looks because you're not really having to interact with it as much as just it's there to represent your location.
The world
Yeah,
and the setting.
yeah. So, can you think of any really bad ones? Again, I can't.
Oh,
Not really.
I'm sure. Like I said earlier. Actually, no, that's wrong. I was gonna say Bubsy, but Bubsy did Bubsy even have 2D before 3D?
Yes, but from what I know, the original Bubsy games weren't even very good in the first place.
Yeah, I heard those. Yeah, they weren't those.
So,
I watched the AVGN on those.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
I'm sure there's tons of games that transitioned from regular 2D to 3D that weren't that good. I can't really think of any off the
Yeah,
top of my head.
must have been.
I'd have to like delve into it.
Yeah. Um, okay. Are there any questions? Gotta get my words right, not questions. Are there any games that you really wanted at the time, but you didn't get them, and then you eventually just stopped caring?
Like, how was the question again? It's like if I wanted a game back then
If
and I
there was a
didn't.
game that at one point you really wanted it, but you kind of just forgot about it, never got it.
Oh, if I'm understanding right, I'd probably be like Borderlands 1. I rented it for some reason. I didn't like it and stopped caring, and then went back to it when I was more into RPGs, and I ended up loving it.
Right. Yeah, I've been playing Borderlands 2 quite recently. Um, but I can. You know what? I've just remembered. It's November the 5th today, which means in the
Hmm.
UK there's going to be loads of fireworks going off. Oh well.
No,
Um,
it's not.
hmm?
How late is it over there?
Right now it is 5:45.
And the night at night?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. Um,
that makes sense then. Well, it depends how dark. Like over down here, fireworks start at like
well,
9.
it's pitch.
I don't know how
It's
dark it
it's
is.
pitch black outside
Okay,
because
if it's pitch black, then
with in with the compared to the US, with the UK being so far away from the equator, our winters get a lot darker and our summers get a lot lighter. So you get
hmm,
to December and it's like you get to December and it's amazing.
pitch
It's
black.
amazing if you get to see the sun. Like no, you have daylight, but
Yeah, I mean like pitch black
the
earlier.
in December the sun sets around 4 o'clock.
Wow.
And then in summer it'll be midnight and you'll still see a bit of sunlight in the distance. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, back to gaming. uh,
Off on a rant.
yeah. So my examples of this was there was two games on the PS1 that I don't know why I wanted them, but I saw the pictures in magazines. There was one called Roscoe McQueen and one called Jersey Devil. They both look like weird platform games. And at the
Hmm.
time I wanted them, but I never got them. And I've never heard of them since. I've actually had to like go up my way thinking like, I remember really wanting Roscoe McQueen and I'd like look it up and obviously it looks terrible now. but
Oh yeah.
I was like, I really wanted it for some reason. Um, okay,
I think I have a couple of other games too that are sort of like your story.
all right,
Well, like I play like Legend of Legaia. I think I played the demo. I played the demo on the PS1 disc, and I think I liked it, but it was when I was really younger.
yeah.
And then recently, I'm just like, I remember that like the sequence in my head, like the scenes and happen, and I'm just like, what the hell is the name of that game?
Oh yeah, that's happened to
And
me several
I kept,
times.
I think I typed in like I think there was like this dragon type thing in the beginning. I was like PlayStation One Dragon or something, and then I found it. I'm just like I saw I was watching a YouTube video on it. I'm like, this is so weird seeing this now.
This is the thing that I remember from way back when.
It's like, and I never bought. I still don't have it. I still want it. I'm just like, wow. And I think there was this other one. I don't know what. Wait, I think you were talking Hearts of Darkness. Is that the one with the little kid?
Yeah,
Actually, I don't know why I didn't resemble it. I didn't put two and two together. It's where you got that little kid and the little electric gun or something,
yeah,
and
yeah. That's Heart of
he's
Darkness.
trying to get his dog.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know why I didn't associate the name when you said it, but I forgot the name. But that was one of them too. Same story as Legaia. I uh, I remembered the demo, and then I searched. I don't know what I searched. I think I searched like dog and kid.
it is strange. It is strange when you like go back to like look back at old things to see how they were. Um, and I can give an example. It's not game related, so I won't spend ages talking about it. But when I was young, and I mean like really young, like say 3 years old, there was a TV program called Rainbow. I don't know how familiar you'd be with it. I don't know how well known it is over in the US, but
Is it Reading Rainbow or just
no, it's just
Rainbow?
called Rainbow.
Okay.
It's like a kids program with like puppets and stuff, with Zippy and George and all that. Um,
What do the puppets look like? Are they got lines? I may be thinking of something else entirely.
Probably just search. Okay. Well, I looked up like I was like, oh, I remember episodes of Rainbow, and there was one particular episode where they go to the they go to like the countryside, and they have a picnic, and I was just watching it, and I was like, this is so strange because it's like such distant memories, but it's strange knowing like me being I think I must have been like 24 when I actually looked this up. But it was strange being
Mm.
24 and looking it up and thinking, I haven't seen this since I was like 4 years old. It because it was like because obviously, because it had to appeal to like my age group at the time. It was all like singing and talking about like,
Mm.
well, that's a leaf, George. Trees have leaves, things like that. And I
Yeah.
remember the song as well that they sang.
Mm.
So yeah,
I just looked up an image. I don't think I've ever seen it before. I don't know. Did it come to our states or is it just a UK thing?
probably just a UK thing, I imagine.
Probably. I'm sure I would have
Yeah,
heard of that if
but
back when it came
to
out.
all the listeners, this is to all the listeners. Search Rainbow, and now there's an episode of there was a secret episode of Rainbow which was designed just for the staff that worked on the program that didn't get released until it came out on YouTube many years later, and
Mm.
it is rather rude. Just search Rainbow Twangers, and yeah,
Rain, Rainbow
yeah,
Twangers.
it's it's it makes you look at it and think, did I watch this when I was little? Well, no, not that episode, no. But the episode that I remembered was the one at the countryside. Anyway, back to games again. Yeah, should call this episode the tangent episode. Yeah,
Going off on random tangents.
right. Got two more questions to get through. Gonna try to
Okay.
get through them quite quickly. Um,
Okay.
are there any games where you got stuck at a single point for a very long time,
Oh,
but the solution was something really silly, some like small detail that you just so happened to miss?
Oh God, so many, but I don't. I can't remember details of all those games that I get stuck on. I can tell you, I know, I can tell you how many games I got stuck and stopped playing it
Well, there
altogether.
was
And then I went
in
back to it.
Final Fantasy VII. There's one that I've heard many people have. There's one part where you go into the wall market and
Hmm.
you go in there to save Tifa, and there's this there's this area that you pass through where it's like all broken roads and like construction equipment and stuff, and there's one pole you have to
Hmm.
walk up.
Oh
Do you know what I'm
yeah,
talking?
I think this. I think I know what you're talking about, and I think I may have missed that.
Yeah. And for me, there was one in Tomb Raider 2 as well, which I love the game, but the Wreck of the Maria Doria, there's one part where you have to collect circuit breakers, and there was one that was hidden behind a door, but it was only hidden behind the door when the door was open because of the way that the doors opened.
Hmm.
And even though it was obvious that I needed to close the doors to form a path, which is it's hard to describe without like a diagram, but basically you had to close the doors. You had to open the doors earlier to get something, but then you had to close the doors so to unblock a path. It
Hmm.
never hit me. You had to close the door, so I was stuck there for ages. It's ridiculous. Okay,
Oh,
last question, which also refers back to the subject. This is really strange and such a big coincidence as well. Which which time would you say that you were most impressed with the graphics of a game?
which time was it? Graphics of the game?
Yeah,
Oh, uh, I could probably think of tons of times. Like whatever generation we had. But like now, I think like I got Metal Gear Solid 5 or something, and I thought it was like the best I've ever seen in my life. But that's just now. Back then, I probably would have been like, Halo looks amazing. It's the best I've seen, or Prince of Persia looked pretty
oh, Prince
good.
of the reboot looks really good. Yeah,
Yeah,
certainly. Which
for the time. Like you can only think I could think of what games per thing I thought
yeah,
looked good, or not thing
yeah. Well,
per
that's what I mean. Like the 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 time,
per
the
generation.
time that like the game that made you go, wow, look at those graphics. I mean, for me, it's been pretty much like my first introduction to every generation. So like Crash Bandicoot impressed me. It was the first PS1 game I saw, I
Yeah,
think. And then
I,
and then when I got a
that's good.
PS2, my first game was Tony Hawk's 3, which really impressed me graphics wise. And then the PS3, the first game I got was Oblivion, which really impressed me graphic wise.
Hmm.
The PS4 hasn't done
I
that
think my
yet. I say PS4, but I mean PS4, Xbox One.
yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, I think it's done it for me to an extent. I mean, I'm sure there's like I said, like Metal Gear Solid 5, but that's really doesn't look. It looks somewhat better than what we got
Yeah.
now, PS3 and stuff, but it doesn't really impress.
The new
It just
generation
looks
graphics
good.
wise, there hasn't been a particular thing where I've looked at it and gone, wow. But saying that, when I get a PS4, that could happen. It could still happen. I'm not saying it won't. It could. Okay.
It will eventually.
Yeah. So, uh, before I end this, is there anything that oh, my voice went a bit strange.
Anything that I
Is there
want to
anything you want
ask.
to ask? Anything you want to add? Anything that you want to plug or anything?
Um, Not in
Right.
particular. Like, I wish I could have thought of something. I don't think I contributed
Yeah.
that much.
It's all right. Taking up about an hour anyway. We had some good conversation.
Yeah, hour and
Yeah.
2 minutes.
So If that's everything, I'm going to end it this here. So, thank you for joining me today, and everyone else. I'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.